Welcome back to another episode of For the Love of Lore. I am Austin, your co-host for today's adventure.
And I'm Abby. We are so glad you're here.
Today in Middle-earth, we will learn about the coming of men and the fall of Beleriand.
And over in Westeros, we are headed west into the Reach, where we will stop at Highgarden to meet the Tyrells, and then we'll go south to Old Town and do a deep dive on Westeros' oldest city.
So, grab a flag and a veil and let's go on an adventure. Or a flagon of tea and coffee. Either one works.
You know.
Welcome back, everybody. We are once again here in the lands of Middle-earth and Westeros. But real quick, we're going to go back to the lands of America. That'd be America. Or Illinois.
Kansas and Arkansas.
America explain.
America explain.
Yeah, we're just do a little check-in again, just because, you know, things move fast in life and things are constantly happening. So, once again, what you been up to, sis?
Well, I have begun the school year.
Oof.
We're just trudging along.
Yep.
But no, the first week was actually really good. My anxiety brain, her name is Nancy. Like, so I think I told you about this. Yeah. So sometimes I just have to be like, shut up, Nancy.
Nancy, go away.
Yeah. But so like she was real concerned about the start of school. So I was kind of on edge going into it. But once I got going, I mean, it's riding a bike. This is my 13th year of teaching. So we're going. And I also help with yearbook. So we are officially past the halfway point of handing out yearbooks to the people that pre-ordered. So that's always like a huge relief because it's like you get all these books and you know that people have paid good money for them, and I know they're itching to get their hands on them, but we have to make sure the right books get to the right people, and it's kind of a headache. So
it's also a lot of books.
We're more than halfway done.
Halfway there. Well, it's just a sing-songy kind of day.
Living on a prayer.
Pocket full of sunshine, man-child.
Yeah.
And halfway there.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
I also had a bit of the anxieties because at work, we are in a transition period where the owner is kind of handing the keys to me and the managers just to kind of see how we manage on our own. So on Sunday, I had a bit of the anxieties as well. And I love when it affects the sleep. It really really makes me happy and chipper on Monday morning. But no, week went pretty well. We have a really solid team around us, so it's exciting to kind of see the future of where we're going. And then a part of that is we get free tickets to go to the Chiefs game downtown at the Doza Park.
Uh-huh.
And I believe we brought ye along to the game.
I went. It was fun. We saw the Chiefs. They are no Savannah Bananas,
no.
but it's fine.
It is. They had fireworks at the end. That was pretty nice.
Yeah, they did. And they got a bunch of home runs.
I know. They are still trying to get one of those teams. That's not the Bananas. They're too big now. But we're trying to get one of those teams down there.
There you go.
Did you see they sold out another stadium last night?
Yeah, and they brought Chance the Rapper.
Oh my God! See, they're doing better than the actual MLB at this point.
Yeah. Did you see that? I saw I don't know if you guys follow the Savannah Bananas at all, but I'm obsessed with them, and seeing them is on my bucket list. And so anyway, I don't think it was last night. It was maybe Friday night at Wrigley Field. They brought Chance the Rapper out to
that
open
is incredible.
Up. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Wrigley, they did something else that was cool. They had, they had the little song at the beginning, that was Take Me Up to, they did that whole thing. They brought Hayden Christensen to sing it.
The Darth Vader.
The Darth Vader, the Anakin Skywalker.
Yep.
And it was also funny because, one, it was cool he was doing it, but it is also the Chicago Air and Water show this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So because I think he was doing it with his daughter, and right when they began singing, a couple of the jets flew right over the stadium and scared the crap out of everybody. So it's a really funny clip.
That is funny.
So we're very baseball heavy today.
We are.
It's not usually my sport. But
it's almost postseason,
Yeah, that's true. And the Cubbies are struggling.
Per the usual, even though I do like them. I know you don't like them. I do like them.
Well, I'm kind of here. I know this is going to be blasphemous to a lot of people, but I am half Cardinals, half Cubs fan.
Okay.
Grandpa Tom was giving me a lot of crap before he passed, and I was like, you know what? I'll start liking him just for you, Grandpa Tom.
There you go.
I root for him.
Yeah.
If Cards and Cubs are playing, I'll root Cards. But other than that, I'll root for the Cubs.
All right.
Speaking of rooting, I don't know how I'm going to tie this into what I'm going to talk about.
Trees, roots.
Trees, roots, and there's a lot of trees that are about to burn, unfortunately.
Oh, shoot.
Yes.
Not the trees.
Yes, we'll start on a lighter note. So
Okay.
let's go full dive into Middle Earth here. So I'm going to cover 2 chapters today. First chapter is chapter 17, which is called "Of the Coming of Men into the West." So we have now hit the point in the book where I'm going to start doing this week. I'm only doing 2 chapters, but going forward, I'm probably going to cover 3 to 4.
Okay.
Because it's gonna the pace. I can quicken it a little bit here because now we've gotten a lot of exposition out of the way. All the main characters are set. Things are happening now. I can kind of fly.
Okay.
But today we're sticking with the 2 chapters, and I just want to kind of quick cover chapter 17 pretty quick because it's just talking about elves and men interacting for the first time, and it is kind of a bit of a big deal because they have some friendly relations and some not so friendly relations. So this is kind of where it all starts, and obviously this relationship is what forges everything going forward, including all the way up to Aragorn and the elves and how they're kind of chill with him living there, which wasn't a thing for a very long time. So some of these characters set that kind of precedent in friendship going forward. So this chapter does mark kind of a big turn in the history of Arda, Earth, Middle Earth, whatever you want to call it. So for ages, the elves have kind of ruled the lands, and especially up here in Beleriand, it's been mainly elves. The dwarves really don't mess with them too much. They're kind of off on their own. There is the Blue Mountains off on the east side. There are some dwarves in there, but they really don't venture into Beleriand all that much. And as I'm talking about this, check our socials because I do have a map of Beleriand and where it would be, as well as Middle Earth, in conjunction with Beleriand. And you'll see, if you look at a Middle Earth map of the Third Age, you'll notice Beleriand is missing. So we'll get into that in a couple of chapters. But bear with me, pull up that map if you need to. You guys can see all the places I'm going to be talking about here as we go along. But, yes, and so they've been ruling Beleriand all by themselves. The elves kind of thought, these are our lands under the eyes of the Valar, and they're like, yeah, we can do whatever we want. And then a new people enter the chat, as the kids say.
Yep.
It's men. Men have finally found their way over to Beleriand. And they come with a bit of promise and a bit of doom.
Ooh.
Not Mountain Doom, but doom. So again, men awoke kind of way far in the east, kind of in the desert of Middle Earth, and they have slowly migrated west under the guidance of some of the Valar, actually. They're following songs and hints of where more life can be, and it's kind of been a slow rising of men, because dwarves, it was pretty quick. They got their technology, they had their minds. Elves, they had all the Valar helping them. The men, it's been a little slower. They're figuring out technology, they're figuring out how to move, how to migrate, and where to live, and all that jazz. But they've also been under constant war with the orcs, because if you check the map again, orcs have been spilling out of Angband and moving all across Middle Earth, and they are now fighting the men way off in the east too. So that's why men are moving west to try to find more allies in the elves and the dwarves. So, they did cross many rivers, forests, and mountain ranges to get to Beleriand, and they were actually, like I kind of said, they were guided by, yes, some of the Valar, but they were also guided by something they couldn't really put a name to. It was just kind of a gut feeling of like, we need to go that way. So when they finally crossed the Blue Mountains, which is the arid Luin, which is what separated Middle Earth and Beleriand for a while, they finally run into the Eldar, which are the kind of the high elves of the West. And this begins the great saga of the Edain. Now, I did a little research, and there's a few ways you can pronounce this word. I say Edain. Some people say Edain. I don't. Either one, do with it what you will.
Did you consult the of pronunciation at the back of the book?
I did not, because it made it too confusing.
Yeah.
So the Edain, it's just the noble houses of men who kind of align themselves with the elves and kind of against the shadow of Morgoth. So the 3 houses. First, we have the House of Beor. They are the first people to arrive in Beleriand. They're very loyal and steadfast, and these men kind of very quickly align with Finrod. And the way this whole thing went down is a really funny story. So Finrod is just kind of journeying about, actually with some of Feanor's sons. Again, Feanor's the guy who burst into nothingness and had a ton of sons who were all kind of quarreling.
Finrod is his brother.
Half brother.
Half brother, yeah.
So
Galadriel's dad.
Yes. So he's just kind of venturing with Feanor's sons, and they stumble upon a camp of men. And they're at first like, who are these weird creatures? And Finrod is like, give me 1 second. He just starts playing music. And it like enchants the men, and they're like, this is the most magical thing we've ever heard.
It's like a snake charmer.
Yes.
Okay.
So then the men are like, well, let us play our music for you. And it's really funny because I think it's like described as what I kind of call like folk music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny to think, like
a banjo.
Yeah, Finrod's out here playing like a harp, and they're out here playing like a little banjo, like but
some bluegrass.
Exactly. But apparently Finrod loved it. He was like, I've never heard this sound before. Tolkien's all in on this music thing and the sound and the all that jazz, and that's how they kind of started their friendship.
All that bluegrass.
That bluegrass. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how the House of Beor came to be, and how they became so close with the elves. They were just sharing some music, and now they're buddies.
Okay.
And so Finrod does invite them to move into Beleriand and gives them kind of a stronghold rather than living out in the forest and getting ripped apart by orcs. So they will be very important going forward in this war with Morgoth. Next, we had the House of Heleth. This one is really fun. This is the first time. Again, this was written in the early 1900s, so Tolkien wasn't woke. Mm-hmm. We needed some more shield maidens in these stories, and we finally get one.
Uno.
So they're kind of a fierce and independent tribe. They do refuse to be under the dominion of any elves. They're little. They don't consider the elves enemies. They just don't trust their. What do you call it? They're not their judgment, but they just don't. They don't trust them fully. But their leader is Lady Heleth, and she is quite the legend in Middle Earth. She's just, she's known for guiding her peoples through very perilous lands, and, she never bows to any elven authority, and she's just kind of like, we're going to do this ourselves, and honestly, I respect the heck out of it.
Okay.
Again, it is very rare to have a female war leader in Tolkien's Legendarium, but I think this is one of the most badass characters that he has written, because she really forged their history just by her sheer will. She fought many large battles by herself with just her and her men. She will be very influential in the story going forward against the Battle of Morgoth too. So you'll hear more coming from her, and she's pretty badass.
Okay, cool. Sounds like Nymeria a little bit.
Yes.
Who we are getting to very soon.
So we stand the shield maidens. Mm-hmm. It's a little tidbit here. So there's always the stories of, for you casual Lord of the Rings fans, Galadriel, she was always walking in those woods of Lothlorien. Before that, it was Haleth. She kind of did the same thing. In the woods where they lived, she would just kind of wander. The men would always fear to approach her because they kind of talk about like it's her kind of meditation time to like think about her planning, what she wants to do, but also her time to like reconnect with nature, because she is also very, like Galadriel, she is very connected to nature. And it's, the whispers go about in the camps that Haleth is actually talking to the gods and getting instruction from them on what to do. But that's all hearsay, but I think really it's just her time to lock in and focus and, do what she needs to do to help her people. So she has defied every tradition. Usually it's the man who leads, but she said, screw that. These are my people. So she took command, and they are called the Helidin, which I think is a sick name for a tribe of people. Mm-hmm. So she came into power because her dad and her brother fell in one of the big skirmishes with the orcs, and the men were all kind of fighting of like who should lead now. And I always think of it like the scene where in the Fellowship where they're at Rivendell and the rings on the little table and they're all fighting amongst themselves like who should take it. And Frodo goes, I will take it. Mm-hmm. I imagine Haleth doing kind of same thing of like, I will lead you. And they all like, you know what? Let's do it.
Yeah. Or just like, as a woman, I imagine it more so like everybody's bickering and you're like, come on. And
Let's get it together.
Yeah.
So yeah, she came into power, and the whole time she has been, they're living in and next to Belorian as they're kind of traveling around, but the whole time again they are surrounded by orcs, darkness, shadows, and even some unsavory characters that we will get into. But she led all of them, and she was steadfast. She never showed fear, and she always refused aid from the elves no matter what, which, again, I still respect because she's like, I'm going to forge my own path. So the elves do come to really respect her, and that's why you'll see here in a few chapters they do go to her when they're kind of being pushed back by Morgoth. They kind of come to her for help, and she's like, I got this.
Mm-hmm.
So very cool story. We'll get into more of her in a couple of chapters, but it is said, I forgot this last little tidbit. It is even said that even Morgoth's minions were scared of her, which is a big deal because not often are orcs scared of any man or elf. So if that says anything about her,
that's pretty cool.
She's BA. So the last house we have is the house of Hador. So these are kind of the golden-haired warriors of the north. The reason I threw in the golden-haired is because these are most of what Rohan becomes is descendants of the House of Hador. It's because the Rohan is full of the horse riders who all have the long blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of their ancestor.
Gotcha.
But they are very mighty in battle and noble in heart, and they would become the greatest allies of the Noldor in the wars to come. And then from their line would come Hurin, Turin, and eventually Elros, which is the first king of Numenor. Numenor, again, is the kingdom of men that its island is detached from Middle-earth, but these are the men who live long lives and are said to be, extra fierce in battle and theoretically are supposed to be more stoic and honorable. So,
okay.
So those are kind of the three clans of men that kind of show their face at first. Now, there are some unsavory men. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. The Edain they all help the elves at some point down the line, but there are the Easterlings. So Easterlings will sound familiar to you guys who know the movies. They're the guys who ride the big elf Oliphants.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Easterlings do show up at this time as well, and they do get into some skirmishes with the elves, and it takes the Edain men to be like, we don't associate with them.
Right.
It's like that's the problem child, and we'll help you take care of it.
Okay.
So they do have some rifts, but the bad thing about the Easterlings is they then very quickly get sucked into Melkor Morgoth's whole shebang, and they start inserting spies into the Edain, and that's kind of how Morgoth gets even more information, is that now the men are kind of, the Easterling men are feeding Morgoth information. So that's kind of all Chapter 17 really is. This is just kind of telling me about the men that come and their dynamics and how they're going to help shape the future of Middle-earth. And fun facts here too. So the first contact between Finrod and the men, as I kind of said before, Finrod is just absolutely captivated by their music, and it's the exchange of song that becomes like their symbol of trust. So one of the reasons that in the Fellowship of the Ring, Boromir mentions how the trumpets always play when men arrive back at Minas Tirith. That tradition kind of started here. This is the very first time song became so important to men, because before it was, like we said, like bluegrass folk, they're just singing to each other, but like here elves tell men like how important song really is.
Okay.
So that's why kingdoms have trumpets. That's why you can connect it all the way to Boromir carrying his little horn, because it's just music is such a big influence in Tolkien's world. And then Haleth, the dope shield maiden, is based off of a lot of shield maidens of Norse myth.
Nice.
And it's not mentioned in any of the movies, but it's who Eowyn kind of always, not prays to, but just kind of looks up to, I guess. So you could kind of say it's her spiritual ancestor.
She's from Rohan, right?
Yes, she is a shield maiden from Rohan.
Yeah.
Who took down
one of the ring wraiths.
Yes, the ring wraith.
She is no man.
She is not. So that's the quick little chapter about men, and now we kind of get into the whole kit and caboodle of the whole thing. Chapter 18. This is where things go pretty rough. So the chapter is called "Of the Ruin of Beleriand and the Fall of Fingolfin." So this chapter, it doesn't hold it. It doesn't hold back. Tolkien just goes right in. It really just begins in fire. So after nearly 400 years of this long siege of Angband, the Noldor's long watch over Morgoth was kind of shattered in an instant. And it really took them by surprise because, again, Morgoth, he knows what he's doing. He's kind of lulling them into a false sense of security of like, yeah, you guys got me. You guys got me trapped. You win. And that's kind of when Morgoth takes his chance and he unleashes a terror on a scale that the elves have never even dreamed of. And this terror is called the Dagor Bragollach, or it's the Battle of Sudden Flame.
Oof.
So
that don't sound good.
No, it's not. So last episode I talked about how he has his castle in Angband, and then he has the three volcanoes sitting right in front of it. So that was on purpose because what Morgoth does is he unleashes the volcanoes, as you could say. Again, the volcanoes are called the Thungaradrim, and he makes all three of them explode at the same time. And as I kind of said, there were, of course, a giant score of elves camping right in front of those mountains in Angband. And unfortunately, that volcanic fire and ash and smoke washed out and it just consumed everything. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of elf lives were lost in one instant because...
Like Pompeii.
Yes, basically. It was the elven Pompeii. And it's said that out of those flames came things that were even worse. It was Balrogs, wolves, and even a dragon. So this is all, it's all looking bad.
Okay.
So they all pour out of Angband, led by Morgoth's new lieutenant, which is, it's not an orc, it's not a troll, it's not a Balrog, it is the dragon. The dragon is the lieutenant. And it has grown to a size that no one's ever seen before, especially from a dragon. And this dragon Glaurung, yes, it's a little different. It's more lizardy because it does have wings, but it really doesn't fly. And Glaurung's power, yes, it comes from its size, but also he has this like piercing gaze that I think he's trying to connect to how Sauron has the one eye.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of the same thing where if you look into Glaurung's eye, you kind of succumb to his will almost. Okay. So his power is persuasion and speech, actually.
It's Harry Potter. It's a snake.
Yes.
Like,
no.
I used to know this lore better, but I don't anymore. But anyway, the second book where you look at the snake and you like, and you.
Yes. Yeah. You're petrified.
Petrified. Yeah.
Yes. It's the exact same thing.
Okay.
So that's where Glaurung's power really comes from is that, yeah, he'll stomp on you and he'll eat you, but really it's one, he talks, and two, his gaze is said to cause great fear in men and elves alike. So after this happened, I mean, we're talking entire kingdoms fall. And the first two to go are Angrod and Agnor. If you're looking at the maps that we post on our social media, you'll see them. They are scarily close to the volcanoes up there, which was a bold move, but I don't judge the elves. And actually, these are the sons of, sorry, these are not cities, they're the sons of Finarfin. They were burned alive defending two of the cities up there. So this is a huge blow to Finarfin. This is a huge blow to the elves because we're talking, they put most of their soldiers up here to defend. And now we've just lost two important cities and two important generals in one fell swoop. So then the plain of Ard Gallon was transformed into something new and something even worse called the Anfagolith, the gasping dust. So it's akin to trekking like the dead marshes right in front of Mordor. It's a wasteland. Nothing will survive there. It's ash, it's dust. It's no good, but obviously it's thriving for orcs. So then orcs can now kind of camp in this land and start pushing out way into Beleriand. And now Beleriand, losing probably about half its soldiers, doesn't really know what to do.
Got it.
And then Barahir, which is a name some should recognize. He's a mortal lord of the House of Beor. This, again, the House of Beor is the very first clan that they met. He actually saved Finrod in a desperate last stand, and it earned him a sacred oath of aid in the Ring of Felagund. And this ring is very, very, very important because it is the only artifact from the Silmarillion all the way to the Lord of the Rings that basically makes it and has an influence on the story. Because that ring changes names later when Mr. Aragorn gets it. It is called the Ring of Barahir. So I have a whole little in-depth story about it here later, but it is the very same ring from the first age all the way till Aragorn gets it. And this ring kind of represents the pact elves and men made that like we'll help each other no matter what. We are allies, and it was all because Barahir saved Finrod. So cool little backstory to that ring. I didn't know it until reading this, to be honest. So this is a fun little tidbit for me. But after all this happens, in the depths of grief and rage, one of the most iconic moments in all of Tolkien's legendarium occurs, and it is the duel of Fingolfin and Morgoth. Yes, so it's going down.
As Taylor Swift would say, it's been a long time coming.
She put it perfectly. So this duel, before I really get into it, is so iconic that it is one of the few scenes in Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion alike that Tolkien actually drew a scene of himself. So he did hire an illustrator for most of it, but this is one scene that he wanted to draw himself. Okay. So I'm going to try to do a little deep dive in the internet and see if I can find it so we can post it on our socials. But obviously this is a very big and iconic moment. So what kind of happened is when word of the exploding volcanoes reached Fingolfin, who is now the High King of Noldor, he was kind of overcome with wrath and despair. And he kind of thought everything was lost. He didn't know what to do. So in a kind of a last hoorah-ditch effort, he mounts his great steed, which the steed's name, the horse's name, is Roshalor, sorry. And he rode alone to the gates of Angband. Solo dolo, didn't want to bring his bros, didn't want to bring his nephews. He just said, I got this, guys. Very bold move. And again, Fingolfin, just a little backstory. He's the second son of Finwë. Finwë was the original leader of the Noldor. And when he passed, it was kind of like, who's going to take the mantle? And Fingolfin said, I got this. And he was kind of elected by the troops himself. So that's kind of why he's this high and mighty fellow. But he was born in the same bloodline as Fëanor, who is his half-brother. And Fingolfin's greatness, doesn't come from the fire inside that Fëanor had that they always talked about. His is just from his resolve. And he was the High King of Noldor. And again, he wasn't chosen. He was brought up by his men, chosen, and that is why he is considered one of the best leaders, especially of the Noldor. And again, this is also the same guy who led, when they were all the way back in Valinor, he led them across the Helcaraxi, which is the frozen ice. It was a very long trek. Galadriel was with him, and he helped settle here in Middle-earth. So that's kind of why that's a little bit of his history before we talk about what really goes down here. But we now have Fingolfin v. Morgoth, and this dude's gonna need something, because Morgoth has been stewing for 400 years. He's gotten stronger. He's built some weapons. He's got a big dragon.
He's got a dragon. Yeah, I was gonna say.
So things are not looking good for our boy. But this is kind of a defining moment when all seemed lost. He said, I'm gonna do this thing. And when he got to the gates, he didn't really know what to expect. He kind of, if you've seen Troy, he was just kind of sitting there screaming at the gates, just like Achilles was, screaming for Hector. Hector! Doing that kind of thing. That's Morgoth, But Morgoth, he did answer, and he came out, and this kind of took everybody aback, because they didn't think Morgoth would do something so bold. But of course, Morgoth knew how strong he was, and I think Morgoth did it because I think, one, he knew he could win, and two, it would strike fear into all of the elves, especially if he took down their strongest king.
Okay.
So, the battle, the duel begins, and it is described by Tolkien as a battle of a titan versus a flame, which is a nice little, I like that. So Fingolfin starts, he kind of dances around Morgoth. He's swift. He's described as swift and brilliant. And he wounds the Dark Lord 7 times, which is, again, Tolkien loves, like George R.R.
The faith of the 7.
They love the number 7.
Yep.
And he's the only one to ever wound the Dark Lord that much.
Okay.
Besides, you'll see Baron Luthien. You'll see them coming up. But he wounds the Dark Lord 7 times. And to do this, every great warrior needs a weapon. So there's been a few trinkets, weapons, things like that have passed in the book, but I didn't want to cover this one because it just sounds so cool.
Okay.
His blade is called Ringiel. It was forged in Valinor, and it glows with a cold blue fire, which I thought was interesting because if you remember Frodo's little sword, also glows.
What's his called?
Sting.
That's right.
So, yeah, it glows cold blue fire, and it strikes fear into the heart of orcs, just like Sting did, because when it cuts an orc, it apparently stings them. So the name Ringiel really means cold star or chill spark. So fascinating little name.
Mm-hmm.
And it slices through any metal, essentially. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It's almost like a freaking lightsaber.
Okay.
And during this duel with Morgoth, it was Ringiel that cut through the Dark Lord's armor, which was thought to be kind of like Valyrian steel, where it's just like impenetrable. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Yes. So it was kind of a shock to Fingolfin himself, but to everybody. In my head, there's like a crowd behind them watching. I don't know if that's true, but it kind of seems like there's people watching.
Yeah.
And so the legend of this blade kind of grows in time, and it is actually so Aragorn's sword Anduril, that's the Sword of Kings, is modeled after this sword, after Ringiel.
Okay.
So it's just a cool old tidbit. I thought it was a dope sword. There are drawings that Tolkien did of the sword too. That was the other thing that he drew. So we'll also see if I can find that and post it on socials. But it's a cool looking sword. Anyways, sword aside, so Fingolfin's he's smaller, but he's more fleet of foot. So he's kind of dancing around him, slicing him as he goes, and Morgoth really just can't keep up. Until Morgoth kind of learns his moves, and as each time Fingolfin jumps aside, the hammer Grond strikes the ground, and it kind of creates these vast craters that are still scarring the land. And I want to talk about Grond too. That should also strike a bit of a note for some of you other Lord of the Rings fans. Grond is the name of the ram that breaks the gate at Minas Tirith in the third movie. It's a giant boar-looking ram. Because it is said I don't know if you remember, Abby, how big that ram is.
Mm-hmm.
That's apparently how big his hammer was. So I think that gives you any scale of how big Morgoth is at this point. He's a big guy. But at some point during the battle, Fingolfin stumbles, and Morgoth unfortunately crushes him with his foot. Not a fun way to go.
No.
But even as he's dying, Fingolfin stabs Morgoth in the foot, and this is a wound for Morgoth that never heals.
Okay.
And for the rest of time, Morgoth will walk for a limp, and it will, of course, tick him off because it reminds him every day of this battle where he was injured and he was made to look weak.
Okay.
Because I think Morgoth's whole point of going out there was to show
easy peasy.
Right. I can do this easy peasy. No one can touch me. Even your greatest king can't touch me, but that's not true.
Right.
One elf almost took him down in a 1v1 fight. So I pulled this little tidbit from the book. This quote says, "Thus perished Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, most proud and valiant of the elven kings of old." So it was an unfortunate end, but it was a very, very valiant fight. So I got to give it to him. He did what he could. You're going against a 15-foot demon. There's really not much you could do. The only good tidbit out of this is that his body was rescued by Thorondor. That is the
Eagles.
Yes, it is the Lord of the Eagles. He flew down and he got Fingolfin's remains and took them back to the elves so that Morgoth could not desecrate them. So, bit of a high note at the end of the chapter, but very unfortunate end for Fingolfin. And now, yes, he did injure Morgoth, but now the Noldor just lost their most grand king, so
Right.
it is looking a little bleak. So I did want to get a couple of fun facts before I wrap this up. So we're gonna go back to Thorondor for a second. Again, he is the king of the eagles, and for the first time, finally, Tolkien gives you a scale of how big this eagle is. His wingspan apparently is 180 feet, which is bigger than a commercial jet. And he also did give Morgoth a little scratch on his face during the rescue, so that's fun too. Give him a little middle finger before he goes off. It was kind of fun.
As he should.
I already did say this fun fact, but Tolkien, again, he himself painted this scene of Fingolfin's duel because it is one of the most pivotal moments in Middle Earth going forward, and I would really like to try to find this image because I think it'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
This is one I pulled off of because I was doing a little research on the one wiki to rule them all.
Mm-hmm.
Great. If you have any info about any of this, that is your website. It's been my best friend. Some fans consider this battle to kind of be the single most metal moment in all of Tolkien. It's been adapted into music by Blind Guardian, Summoning, and others. So, like, if you look up this artist, they wrote songs to kind of show you how intense this battle really was supposed to be.
Okay.
And then I already did talk about the sword. So, the aftermath of this battle is basically, with Fingolfin gone, his son Fingon kind of becomes the new High King, and Fingon he's fine. He's fine. It's
he's,
tough.
But he's Galadriel's brother.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
So, but it's tough to be thrust into a role this big.
Right.
So the strength of Noldor is truly broken, and now Morgoth can kind of begin his reign of the North. And so now the stage is set for even more betrayal, more sacrifice, and even more tragic tales to come. And in the next few episodes, I'm going to be talking about Beren Luthien, Turin, and the fall of Gondolin. So these are all stories that you have all probably heard in passing, but we're going to dive really, really deep into them and talk about how Morgoth does reign for a good amount of time. It's not all sunshine and rainbows in Middle Earth. So we have kind of come to the dark point of Middle Earth, unfortunately.
Okay.
But again, we have to think back that they had 400 years of peace,
right?
And there's even more peace before that. So it's not like it's all bad. They had a good time to grow and have peace. But
they're in their Dark Ages era.
Yes, we are now in the Dark Ages of Middle Earth. So that is where we're at.
Okay.
At the end of this chapter.
Well, some exciting stuff.
Yes.
Even though it's sad.
It is, but I'm very excited to talk about Beren Luthien because that is the elf maiden and the mortal man who fall in love and take on Morgoth themselves. And
Got it. Okay.
It's what inspires Aragorn and Arwen. So I'm very excited to talk about that. And then the fall of Gondolin is also a fun story of some kinslaying once again.
Can't be doing that.
Some civil war, and then a lot of Morgoth doing Morgoth. So very exciting stuff coming up. And like I said, I'll be covering probably 3 to 4 chapters here from now on because they're all a little shorter and I can kind of speed through them a little bit. So I'm excited to go over it.
Cool.
Okay. Wow. That was I'm out of breath. I don't know why. I've just been sitting here.
I mean, it was a whole story.
It was.
It was a Titan versus a flame.
It was. But now, are you ready to go over to Westeros?
I'm ready, but I need the mouse.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you. All right. Well, come on down to the farm. I hope you guys all brought your apple barrels and you're ready for a hayrack ride because we are headed to Westeros's most fertile lands where a bountiful harvest is always on the horizon. Doesn't that sound pleasant?
It sounds awesome. It sounds way better than what we were just in.
Yeah. Welcome to the Reach. This kingdom has a lot to brag about, and the people from here do love to brag. So here we go, listing all of their little fun things. They are the second largest kingdom in Westeros, right behind the North, but it is the most heavily populated kingdom. Before Aegon's conquest, it was known as the Green Realm or the Kingdom of the Reach. So bastards born here take the last name Flowers.
This place just sounds wonderful.
I know, that's my favorite, bastard last name. Flowers. The green fields and meadows are commonly known to be the birthplace of chivalry in Westeros. as well as the first place where singers began to pass on stories to new generations through their colorfully detailed songs that we know and love. This kingdom does have a lot to brag about because they're an incredibly powerful kingdom. The wealth of the ruling house Tyrell is outnumbered only by the Lannisters, and they are the largest food and drink exporter in the entire realm.
They got money.
They got money, yeah. This is also where the largest institution for learning in Westeros sits. It's at the... Oh, that's my dog, sorry.
Gracie's making a guest appearance.
At the Citadel in Old Town. We're going to talk a lot more about that later. And then as it currently stands, the Reach is bordered by the Sunset Sea to the west, the Westerlands to the northwest, the Riverlands to the north, Crownlands to the northeast, Stormlands to the east, and Dorne to the south. So it touches a lot of the other kingdoms.
They're right in the mix of everything then, huh?
Yeah. And then the Reach itself is kind of broken down into 4 smaller kingdoms that it was once comprised of. Now they're kind of all lumped together in what we know as the Reach. But first up is the Arbor. This is its own island. It's relatively small, but it's off the southwest coast of the Reach, and it's held by House Redwyn and their fleet. It's currently the largest fleet in Westeros. At one time, I believe the Valarians, like Corlys, and his fleet was larger at one point in time, but currently, modern times, they are the biggest. They are even bigger than the fleet of the Greyjoys, which I thought was interesting. The Redwynds are super rich because the Arbor is known for producing world-renowned wines, including both reds and golds. The reds and golds are described as sweet, while other wines that are made in Dorne are described as dry. And Dorne usually only has red.
This is where I need to be then.
Yeah. And then traders from the Arbor often sail as far away as Karth to sell the wine from the Arbor. Like, it's known all over the world, not just in Westeros. So then, moving on from the Arbor, we have the Western Marches. This is real similar to the Stormlands marches that we talked about in the last episode. Often the towns that lay in these marches switched allegiances between the Reach and the Stormlands. So one of the towns that still remains with the Reach today is Horn Hill, which is the home of Samwell Tarly.
We love him.
Snaps for Samwell Tarly. We love him. But yeah, so Horn Hill is one of those places that kind of flip-flopped between the Storm Kings and the Green Kings. So, but as of right now, it's part of the Reach. Then there's the Reach proper. This is the heart of the kingdom. It was originally ruled by House Gardner from the town and castle called Highgarden. Many noblemen consider this to be the most beautiful palace in Westeros. And it's just miles and miles and miles of fertile farmland with dozens of smaller castles and keeps dotting the surface. All of these lands are irrigated by Westeros's largest river. It's called the Mander, and its tributaries. So there are 2 major roads that go through the Reach. There's the Rose Road, which connects King's Landing to Highgarden and Old Town. And then the Ocean Road connects Highgarden to Lannisport up in the Westerlands. There are 4 islands off the coast of the Reach proper, and these are called the Shield Islands. We briefly talked about them last episode we've talked about them twice. In the episode where we learned about the Iron Islands, the Iron Men overtook those 4 Shield Islands at one point and began moving inland up the Mander River, and then overtaking some of those towns as well. And then in the last episode, we talked about how Rhaenys and her grandpa, King Jaehaerys, flew on their dragons from Highgarden to all 4 of those Shield Islands. The islands' names are Green Shield, Gray Shield, South Shield, and Oaken Shield, which is a Lord of the Rings reference.
Yep. Thorin.
Yep. All right, and then last up is Old Town and its suburbs. It does have little suburbs around it. And it's called that because it really is the oldest city in Westeros. And it's as large as King's Landing, but described by all who have visited both as 100 times more beautiful.
Did we ever see it? We did.
Yeah, you see it in the show a little bit, just a little bit. Here in Old Town, this houses the Citadel, where all of the maesters study. The Starry Sept is here, which used to be the high seat of the Faith of the Seven. And then the High Tower, which is the tallest tower in Westeros. We'll dive more into the High Tower later, but that is where House Hightower lives, in the actual High Tower.
Just imagine the city having like hanging gardens everywhere. It smells like flowers, and it's all nice.
Yeah, it's a really cool city, and we are going to deep dive on it. All right, so the history of the Reach begins with a man named Garth Greenhand. Garth. And is with many tales of the first men. Most of these accounts are highly unlikely, and some even kind of contradict one another, but supposedly he was the father of every great house and noble family within the Reach. What is hard to argue with is that he was considered the High King among all of the first men, like even the first men that lived up in the north, even the first men that lived over in the Stormland, all of them. This Garth Greenhand was their High King. He's the one who supposedly led them across the Arm of Dorne when it still existed, or perhaps he came by himself and stayed here for 1,000 years before he invited the others to join him. No one really knows, but some people say he was literally like green from head to foot, like Elphaba from Wicked.
Wow.
Who knows? Other people say he simply dressed all in green, something to that effect. But what everybody agrees on is that he had a green thumb, not literally, but like as in the expression. He had an incredible gift with crops of all kinds, and he seemed to understand the earth and how to nourish it as if it were his own child. So he's the person that taught the first men how to farm so that they didn't have to rely on a hunter-gatherer lifestyle anymore. Many people considered him a god or godlike, and specifically a god of fertility. Now this part gets weird.
Uh-oh.
Supposedly,
it does.
Supposedly he walked around with a big canvas bag slung over his shoulder. It was filled with seed, which he scattered along everywhere he walked. It gives me gross Santa vibes.
Yeah, what?
Like, I don't know. But then apparently like orchards, farms, vineyards would just like spring up behind him.
Okay, I thought this was going a different direction.
Yeah, well, we're getting there.
Oh.
So as befits a god of fertility who walked around sowing his seeds from a big canvas bag, he did father a ton of children.
Well, there it is. Okay.
But yeah, I'm not going to list all of his children, but there is a ton. Maybe someday we'll revisit, because like they had some cool names and some cool stories, but if we go down that rabbit hole, we'll be there for an hour. So
wow, he was sowing a lot of seed then.
Oh
my.
The greatest of his children, though, we will talk about that one, was Garth the Gardener, who built a castle on a hill overlooking the Mander River. And that castle would eventually become known as Highgarden.
Well, there you go.
So Garth the Gardener wore a crown of flowers and vines. He sat on a living throne called the Oaken Seat, which is part of an actual oak tree. The seat is just kind of like built straight into the tree. And the tree
want to be here.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place. And then this established House Gardener as the ruling house of the Reach all the way up through the coming of the Andals and the Rhoynar until Aegon the Conqueror arrives. So they last a long time. The Andals actually never even really messed with the Reach, which is different. I feel like all the kingdoms we've talked about so far, the Andals eventually kind of made their way there and conquered a little bit. The Reach, they were kind of terrified of. So, and also like they had some obstacles in their way, because first we know they landed in the Vale, began working their way inward or inland from there. So geographically, the Reach is kind of a hike to get there, and there's a lot of other first men on the way to get there. And then second, House Gardener took a really smart approach to the Andals over the course of many generations. When they first learned of it, they tried to ally themselves with the Children of the Forest to help protect against the Andals. Then they started building extra curtain walls around all of their castles, not just Highgarden. They doubled the sizes of all of their fleets and armies, and then they even occasionally asked for magical help from the woods witches and sorcerers, things like that. And in the end, by the time the Andals could have even attempted to overtake the Reach, so many generations had passed that they were more inclined to assimilate rather than conquer, and the Gardener Kings accommodated that. So they just kind of started marrying Andal people, 2 Gardner brothers took Andal wives, and they named an Andal knight, Sir Alistair Tyrell, as the king's champion and sworn shield. So this is where House Tyrell comes into play. They are of Andal descent, but they get named the king's champion and sworn shield. So
wow.
In time, the Tyrells eventually become the hereditary stewards of Highgarden under the Gardeners. So if you remember way back to episode 1 or 2, we talked about how White Harbor in the north, it's the only city in the north, and it's a port city. It's ruled by House Manderley. But the Manderleys were originally from the Reach, and they get exiled to the north. So the story there goes all the way back to these times with the Gardner Kings. There was a Gardner King, Garth X, who had 2 daughters but no sons.
There's a lot of Garths.
There's a lot of Garths. One of Garth's daughters married a Lord Peake, and then the other daughter married Lord Manderley. Both of these lords conspired to put their own wife on the throne, and then bloody battles ensued. Sadly, during these battles, the Reach was left vulnerable to attacks from outsiders. So the Storm King and the King of the Rock, that would be, the Baratheon and the Lannister kings are both try to take some lands that are bordering their own lands. And then some of the Dornish kings start raiding the larger cities. Yeah. Highgarden gets sacked by one of the Dornish kings, and the Oaken Seat is chopped up and burned.
No.
I know. We're losing trees.
What is happening?
I know. It is sad. So eventually, Sir Osmond Tyrell steps in, defeats both the Peaks and the Manderleys, reclaims the ruins of Highgarden, and then the Peaks, their house kind of like comes back to order, I guess you could say. Like they like bend the knee again and everything. But and then they side with the Gardeners and the Tyrells, and they help to exile the Manderleys. So the Peaks still live in the Reach. At their keep is called Starpike, but the Manderleys move on up to the north and establish White Harbor. So that's how that happened.
Dang.
Yeah. So
I thought it was all sunshine and rainbows in Highgarden.
Right, and flowers.
And flowers, but no.
No, there's some sad stuff. So let's talk about Highgarden, the most beautiful castle in all of Westeros. It sits on top of a hill that is described as neither stony nor steep, but broad. And the palace almost seems to kind of grow up out of the ground itself because it blends so seamlessly with the scenery around it. Most Westerosi people would tell you, hands down, this is the most beautiful castle in the realm. Except for the Men of the Vale, who are gonna obviously they prefer the Eyrie.
Get them out of here. Erie's cool, but it's not
right.
It's not Highgarden.
Yeah. So this hill overlooks the Mander River, as well as lots of orchards, farms, pastures, and meadows where the golden roses of House Tyrell grow in abundance. There are 3 curtain walls, and the walls are made of bright white stone. Each wall is thicker than the one below it. So the one closest to the ground is the thinnest, supposedly, and then they get thicker as you go up. And in between the first wall and the second wall, there's this hedge maze, like a Harry Potter type hedge maze. And it's been maintained for centuries for 2 reasons. One, it's a great way to entertain the royal children and guests.
Let's go play in the maze.
Just go get lost. And then it's also a good defense system to outsiders who would easily lose their way in such a labyrinth. Obviously, if you live in Highgarden, I would think that they teach you how to navigate it.
I was gonna say, that could be so annoying to get through sometimes, though.
Yeah. And then within the innermost wall are sleek towers that look down on the gardens, arbors, pools, fountains, courtyards, and man-made waterfalls. So
this place just sounds like heaven.
Yeah. Ivy covers most of the buildings. There's flowers everywhere. Like, it's just a pretty place. And then how do we get to House Tyrell? The Tyrells served as the stewards to the Gardner Kings for centuries. They would occasionally rule Highgarden during times of war or regency. So if the Gardeners were at war, the Tyrells would stay back at the castle to kind of keep things running. And same thing, if the Gardner King was too young to rule, then the Tyrells would be like the regent for them until they came of age. But towards the end of the Gardner line, there were 10 instances where Gardners married Tyrells, which then kind of lent the Tyrells some royal blood. But the Gardners remained in control right up until Aegon's conquest. They were defeated on the Field of Fire, which is a pretty infamous battle. It took place during Aegon's conquest. The Lannisters and the Gardners kind of both call up their banners. They kind of ally with each other. Most of their bannermen answered the call, and they all go out to meet the Targaryen army on a field just south of the Blackwater, supposedly kind of in the northern portion of the Reach. And the two allies were actually starting to defeat the Targaryen army, but then Aegon and both of his sisters took flight on their 3 dragons, and they set the dry field on fire. They used the wind to their advantage to help spread the fires towards their enemies, and the Gardner bloodline effectively ended on this day. The Lannisters had kept quite a few people back at Casterly Rock, so their line did not end, but pretty much all of the Gardners were there. Anybody who could have had any claim was there. So notably, all of House Hightower stayed back in Old Town on the advice of the High Septon. And then when Aegon arrived at Old Town, the Hightowers opened up their gates and swore allegiance to him.
I mean, there's really not much you can do.
Yeah.
Against that kind of power.
Yep. And then House Tyrell had also stayed back at Highgarden to rule in the Gardners' stead, and they too opened the gates and swore fealty to Aegon and his sisters. So this is why Aegon names the Tyrells the Lords of Highgarden, Lords Paramount of the Reach, and the Wardens of the South.
Wow, a lot of titles.
A lot of titles. The Tyrells would prove a wise choice for Aegon. They helped him in all his efforts to conquer Dorne. Aegon himself never conquered Dorne. It wasn't until a few generations later, but House Tyrell remained loyal and eventually helped him do that. And they're able to kind of the Tyrells are able to absolve themselves of any participation in the Dance of the Dragons, mostly due to luck. So when the Dance of the Dragons breaks out, the ruling Lord Tyrell was a baby, and his mother acts as his regent. So she kind of chooses to remain neutral. She's like Switzerland for the entirety of the war. And her doing that kind of preserved the Tyrell bloodline and its wealth. So that's why in House of the Dragon, you don't really see or hear too much from the Tyrells because they're not really in it. They don't have a stake in the game at all, I guess you could say. That's kind of why House Hightower is way more prevalent.
Gotcha.
Because they're kind of the secondary house from the Reach that has claim to power. Plus they've got Alicent Hightower is the queen, or the, late king's wife, So anyway, at present in Game of Thrones times, Lord Mace Tyrell sits at the head of House Tyrell, along with his mother Olenna, who is one of my faves. I love Olenna. She, you know who I'm talking about?
No.
The old lady that's like from.
Oh yes, and then she, at the very end, when she's sitting across from Jaime, and
and she kind of admits that she is the one that poisons Joffrey.
Power move. Yeah.
And Olenna famously kind of thinks of her son Mace as like an oaf, like she.
Yeah, big oaf.
Yeah. So anyway, Mace is married to a Hightower. Her name is Lady Allery, and we don't really meet her in the show, but she is pretty significant in the books. And they have 4 children together. And in the show, we really only meet Loras and Margaery Tyrell, but there's 2 other sons, Willis and Garland, and they are kind of important as well. So someday, when we have time to do a deep dive on them, we will, because they're important.
I don't even know if they probably did mention them on the show. I just don't remember.
I think the show kind of edited Willis and Garland out. It really only shows you Loras and Margaery, and then it doesn't really show their mom at all.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into Old Town, which is quite an appropriate name for this city. Literally no one knows how old Old Town is, but the foundations of the city and the runes inscribed on them have been studied by the maesters, who have determined that this city has been inhabited by men since the Dawn Age.
It's pretty old.
Yeah. There's about 100 mysteries surrounding this fact, like Were these ancient first men? Are they ancient Valyrians? Are they a completely separate tribe of men we've never heard from before? No one really knows, but it's old, like super old. And it sits kind of at the mouth of the Honeywine River in a bay that's called the Whispering Sound. And that makes it ideal as a port city. And undoubtedly, traders from across all of the continents have docked here. They want to get their wine. They want to get the other like foods and stuff that grow really well here. So at the center of this bay is an island called Battle Isle. And the high tower, and this is two separate words, like high tower, is built here on this Battle Isle. This place has been called Battle Isle since the time of the earliest written records, but there's never any explanation offered for why it's called that. So we don't know when the battle was or who was in the battle, but evidently there was a battle there, and now it's called Battle Isle. And the island itself seems to be constructed by man, potentially with the aid of magic or sorcery, but the Maesters do not seem to think it's a naturally occurring island. It's described as having these massive black stone walls that contain a labyrinth maze inside. The walls and the maze within have no joints, no mortar, no chisel marks to be found, leading a lot of people to conclude that ancient Valyrians used dragonfire to melt the rock and then like reshape it. But that's a hard theory to prove because that technique was used in Valyria a lot, and that's kind of why they assumed this must have been the Valyrians. But in Valyria, the resulting architecture, like from using that method of dragons melting the rock and reshaping it, it was really like ornately decorated stone with like symbols and designs and like very intricate, whereas the stone on Battle Isle is pretty plain. So it's like, was it really the Valyrians?
It is a bit of a mystery.
Yeah. So in any case, this is where House Hightower takes up residence. By the time their names show up in written records, they're already kings. They rule over Old Town from this Battle Isle. On top of the stone is a beacon tower, which is basically just a lighthouse. It was not constructed to be a home. It was more just to help guide the ships into harbor. The first of these towers was only 50 feet high, and it was made of wood. So the families, the Hightower families, mostly lived down in that stone maze, and it was like kind of cold and dark. But over the centuries, the tower keeps getting rebuilt to be taller, supposedly with the help of Brandon the Builder. Here he is again.
Yes, here he is. Man, he's a busy guy.
He's a busy guy.
He's got a lot to do.
Yeah. And presently, it is the tallest structure in Westeros, even taller than the Wall. So the Hightowers eventually, there's two Hightower kings in a row that like both of them like double the size of the Hightower. So it like doubles and then doubles again.
You can see a whole lot up there.
Yeah. And it still has a beacon on top. Like there's still like a flame up there. So the Hightowers eventually bend the knee to the Gardeners after lots of negotiations, and Old Town officially just kind of becomes part of the Reach. They welcome the Andals pretty much with open arms. Lord Dorian Hightower is quoted as saying, "War is bad for trade." That sounds like a Wall Street thing to me, but so that's his explanation for why he left his wife of 20 years for a young Andal bride.
Yeah, right.
Yep. And then his grandson Daemon was the first Hightower to become part of the Faith of the Seven. So Daemon builds the first sept in Old Town, and then he builds 6 others because we can't just build one; we have to build 7.
Of course, you have to have 7.
And then he dies unexpectedly, leaving a son, Tristan, who's too young to rule. So a septon named Septon Robeson rules for Tristan until he's old enough, and eventually this Septon Robeson becomes the first High Septon. After Septon Robeson dies, Tristan Hightower builds the Starry Sept in his honor. So the Starry Sept is this big dome-shaped building with black marble walls and arched windows. It becomes the residence for all succeeding High Septons who have like living quarters within the structure of the starry sept. There are crypts below the sept that contain the bodies of the deceased, like previous high septons. And when a high septon dies, members of the most devout, which is capitalized, most devout is both capitalized, which is like, like super septons, basically, or like cardinals in the Catholic world. They all gather in the starry sept to choose the successor. So before being anointed and consecrated, a new high septon has to stand vigil in the starry sept. So if you haven't picked up on it yet, I'm pretty sure Old Town is this universe's version of Rome. And then like the starry sept would be like Vatican City. Yep. So I think that's kind of where
that makes sense
going. And like just the fact that Old Town is super old, like Rome. So
that tracks. Is there a Colosseum?
There could be. This is the first place this is the place where Aegon the Conqueror formally accepts the faith of the Seven. And this is actually where he gets crowned. The Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, or, King of the Seven Kingdoms, is actually here in Old Town. You would think it's in King's Landing, but it's not, because when he conquers the places, this starry sept is still where the high septons are operating out of. They don't move to King's Landing until later. So this is actually where he's crowned. Eventually, up in King's Landing, the Great Sept of Baelor is built, and the High Septon and company, they all kind of pack up and move up there. But the Starry Sept is still in Old Town, and it still houses a lot of septons and septas. So yeah, it still is like a working sept, and it's still important and kind of like a landmark. It's just that now the High Septon and all of them live.
It ain't the main hub anymore.
Yeah. Yep. So the other important landmark in Old Town is the Citadel. And this is actually more of a campus than a building. It's kind of like a university almost. They have a whole complex of buildings where men and boys from all over the realm gather to study, and they forge links for their maester's chain. So, and there's no women allowed. There was one Targaryen queen who really advocated for girls and women to be accepted at the Citadel, but she was turned down. So the Citadel is funded by taxes from Old Town and payments from the lords who use the service of maesters. So it's basically like a public university. Like that's how it's funded. All the towers and domes within the Citadel are connected with arching stone bridges. And the front gate is pretty cool. The front gate has a green sphinx on either side. The sphinxes are described as having eagle wings, lion bodies, and serpent tails. But one of the faces is male and the other is female, which I find fascinating.
Very.
Because they don't let women study there.
They're picky and choosy about it.
Right. So like, why?
Huh.
But there's not really an explanation as to why one of the sphinxes is female, so who knows? But yeah, immediately inside the gates of the Citadel is this place called the Scribe's Hearth. And it's set up kind of like a market. It's like a scribe for hire situation. So if you if you need to hire a scribe to like write a letter for you or read a letter for you or translate a letter, anything like that, that's where they are. And then some of the other stalls in there, they sell books, maps, manuscripts, things like that. Other places inside the gates are the Isle of Ravens. That's like where the rookery is, where they can send out a raven. There's the library and the vaults, where the greatest repository of knowledge in Westeros is contained. And we are going to do a deep dive on the Maesters in our next episode, so just stay tuned. We're hanging out here for some more. I was going to try to squeeze it all into this episode, but it's just so much, so they get their own whole episode. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up our tour of the Reach here, that we will be back very soon to take a look at the Citadel and the Maesters and all of the wonders within.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't the Game of Thrones books supposed to be like the point of view of the Maesters, or is it of Samwell? I don't remember which.
So the Fire and Blood is kind of from the point of view of the Maesters.
Gotcha. That's what I was thinking of. Okay.
Game of Thrones, it switches point of view every chapter, and it tells you whose point of view.
Okay. I was thinking the Fire and Blood book.
Yeah, Fire and Blood supposedly is like written by the Maesters.
Because they break the fourth wall in that book sometimes, being like, we're not sure if this is actually accurate of what happened, but it's what people say happened. Like they break that wall a lot. So it's like, oh, this is obviously written by some kind of keeper. So that makes sense. It's the Maesters.
Yeah.
That was cool though.
Yeah. The Reach is, they like to brag. They got the prettiest castle. It's where chivalry was born.
Because people always ask, like, if you were in Game of Thrones, where would you be? Where would you live? I'm like, I just found my home. I'm going to Highgarden. Are you kidding me?
Going to Highgarden.
I want to sit on an oaken throne. It's chopped bits now. But
yeah, I'll still be in Winterfell.
You want to be in Winterfell?
I love Winterfell. Yeah, but they have things to protect against that.
They have Sean Bean, so
they do.
And they have
Sophie Turner. She's my queen.
They have the queen up there.
Mm-hmm. My queen.
Yes, but that was fascinating. All right, well, fellow adventurers, that is a wrap for today's journey into the realms of Westeros and Middle-earth. We hope you've enjoyed journeying through the histories, mysteries, and fascinating lore of these worlds.
We will return with insights, laughs, and maybe even some unexpected dragons of wisdom along the way. Next up in our Middle-earth adventure, we will learn of the tale of Beren and Luthien. And then over in Westeros, we're still hanging out in Old Town a little bit longer to do a deep dive on the Maesters of the Citadel.
And we encourage you guys to join our conversations on our Instagram at fortheloveof.lore. Share your theories, tell us your grievances, or just chat about how you discovered these epic sagas yourself.
Like, what's your favorite character arc in Game of Thrones? Or your favorite battle scene in Lord of the Rings? We want to hear from you.
Thanks for tuning in, and remember, the best adventures are the ones we take together. We swear it by the old gods and the new. Peace!